This urban legend takes place in my home state, in Georgia. At the bottom of Lake Lanier lies fully intact towns, ferries, a racetrack, and multiple cemeteries. The government, in their determination to create Lake Lanier, bought up entire towns in order to clear the space for the lake after they received congressional approval in 1946. However, instead of demolishing the towns, they just decided to let the water flood over it. If you don't think that's freaky, it gets much worse. Lake Lanier has a really creepy feel about it. There have been unusual amounts of freak accidents and deaths on the lake. In 2011, there were 17 deaths alone. Many of the people who have drowned have been recovered. People have reported feeling arms and legs in the water. Could this be the spirits that were flooded over in the cemeteries in the lake? You decide. The Goatman of Popelik. There's no clear consensus on how the Goatman came to be. Some say he was a circus freak. Others say he was a farmer who tortured his goats for Satan and in return was transformed into a hideous goat monster. Legend has it that the monster hides under the bridge at Popelik Creek in Louisville and lures people onto the train tracks, only for them to be hit by the train. Sadly enough, this urban legend has in fact caused deaths. In 2016, a woman fell from the bridge while looking for the Goatman. I investigated some of the stories related to the Goatman and found some very interesting stories. While many sightings of cryptid animals are more harmless, the Goatman sightings, however, are more associated with violence towards humans and animals, and is often seen wielding an axe. Regardless if the stories are true or not, the stories are still terrifying. The Charman. Like most urban legends, the Charman's origin is also gruesome. The story takes place in 1948 when a father and son were both caught inside a house fire and horribly burnt. After the fire, the son became so mentally unstable that he flayed his father and hung him from a tree. When the police found the son, he was so unrecognizably burnt that they didn't realize that he was alive, so he ran away before they were able to arrest him for the murder of his father. Since then, the Charman is still spotted wandering the woods and roads of that area. There have been many sightings of the Charman by campers. The sightings range from a spiritual entity to an actual man being burned trying to kill them. Despite there being very little evidence about this Charman, there have been many sightings associated with him. It kind of makes you wonder what is going on in the woods. The Thehussac Tunnel. The tunnel itself is quite impressive. It is 4 3/4 mile long, or 7.64 kilometers for all you metric users out there. The tunnel took millions of dollars and 24 years to complete. In those 24 years, 200 men have died. The tunnel is supposed to be extremely haunted. There have been claims of screamings, shoutings, and many paranormal activities happening in this tunnel. Lights can be seen coming out of the tunnel when there's no one inside. Oddly enough, despite this tunnel being quite old, it is active to this day, and is pretty narrow. If a train were to be coming through the tunnel while you were inside, you would be in trouble. If the tunnel wasn't active, would you ever consider walking miles into a deep, haunted tunnel that has no lighting? I think we all agree that you'd have to be pretty brave. In the early 1900s, children in an unnamed rural town in Texas started to go missing. The residents blamed it on the candy lady. The story says that she would go around leaving candy on the children's windows, and eventually she would lure the kids out with notes attached, promising more candy. The urban legend caused an actual crisis when a farmer found rotten teeth on his farm and later found the body of a boy with his pockets stuffed with candy. In many cultures, there are often urban legends surrounding bad people or creatures trying to lure kids into the woods with candy. Is this just another adaptation to that urban legend? Or is this something more sinister? The Bunny Man. Unlike most urban legends, this one has been started by two actual sightings of a bunny man. Prior to the sightings, it is alleged that a man from a local insane asylum escaped into the woods, never to be caught. The first sighting was reported the evening of October 19th, 1970, by the U.S. Air Force Academy cadet Robert Bennett and his fiancée. The sighting goes that they parked their car on Geneva Road to visit an uncle. As they sat in the front seat with the motor running, they noticed something moving outside their rear window. Moments later, the front passenger window was smashed and there was a white-cladded figure standing near the broken window. It was a man in a bunny costume. Being terrified, Bennett took off down the road, with the man in the bunny costume yelling at him. While they were driving down the road, however, the fiancée of Bennett found what smashed the window. It was a hatchet. The second reported sighting occurred on October 29th, 1970, on the same road. A construction security guard named Paul Phillips approached a man standing on a porch of an unfinished home. The man was wearing a bunny costume and was chopping something with an axe. When Phillips approached him, the man in the bunny costume said, "If you come any closer, I'll chop off your head." In the following weeks, there had been 50 unconfirmed sightings of this bunny man. Some other reports have came in that the bunny man would take and eat local people's cats and dogs. One of the more disturbing stories about this urban legend is that they would find hundreds of cleanly skinned, half-eaten carcasses of rabbits hanging from trees. There was an actual police investigation in regards to the bunny man. Their main suspect was a man named Douglas J. Griffin. The police were able to locate Griffin, but were not able to apprehend him because he was hit by a train in his attempt to escape. However, on the anniversary of his death, reports would come in of skinned rabbits being hung from trees. Was this the work of a copycat? Or was this the spirit of the bunny man? The Windigo is often depicted as a demon or an evil spirit that takes the appearance of a large, decaying animal. The Windigo is closely associated with starvation, extreme cold, and social taboos, such as cannibalism. According to legend, the consumption of human flesh could cause a person to be taken over by the spirit of the Windigo. Some say that it's even possible to go insane from the cold, and that would allow you to also change into the Windigo. Unfortunately enough, there is a mental condition called the Windigo psychosis. It is an actual condition where people crave human flesh, despite there being food readily available. There are many cases of the Windigo psychosis in the 1800s, most, if not all cases, attributed to areas with poor crops, bad harvests, or little to no game to hunt. Out of the 70 cases that were studied, it is worth noting that a vast majority of them had not yet eaten anyone, but they had the desire to consume human flesh for no reason. Probably the best known case of Windigo psychosis is that of Swift Runner. During the winter of 1878 through 79, Swift Runner murdered his wife, mother, brother, and his 5 children and ate them all. He was arrested by the Canadian authorities, and his explanation to the crime was that he was possessed by a Windigo. The Legend of Kusakeona. Kusakeona takes place in Japan. She is known as the slit-mouthed woman that roams around at night with a mask of her own mouth. Legend has it that if she encounters you at night, she will ask you if that you think she's beautiful. If you say no, she will kill you. But if you say yes, she removes her mask, revealing her grotesquely slit mouth, and asks you again if you think she's beautiful. If you say no, she obviously kills you. But if you say yes, instead of killing you, she takes a razor and slits your mouth the same way as hers. Tiki is a woman that's said to have fallen or jumped in front of a speeding train. As a result, she lost both of her legs. The legend says that her spirit now drags herself on her elbows and tries to cut off the legs of anyone that she meets. She is called Tiki because that is the sound she makes when she's dragging her body while crawling. The legend of Muona. Muona is said to be an old woman who died of grief due to her son's untimely death. The legend said that she kept crying and crying until her eyes started to bleed. Now she tries to possess small children to anguish her grief. Bodies underneath hotel beds. The urban legend goes that people find dead bodies underneath their hotel beds. In fact, this is unfortunately a real possibility. One event I found online spoke about an incident where a couple was staying on a mattress that was concealing a corpse underneath it. So if you're ever staying in a hotel and your child says that there's something underneath the bed, they could very well be right. The clown statue. This urban legend is one of my favorites. It has your classic setup of a horror movie with a teenage babysitter watching these kids. At one point in the night, she realizes that there is a clown statue in the family's living room. Being a new babysitter and not wanting to offend the family, she calls the parents to see if she could cover up the clown statue because it was freaking her out. The parents then freak out, telling the babysitter to remove the kids from the house because they do not own a clown statue. Death by Chimney. Santa Claus somehow manages to make it down millions of chimneys every year, with a little bit of help of Christmas magic. People, however, are not as magical. The story goes that a woman tried to infiltrate her boyfriend's house through the chimney. Trying to enter the chimney head first, she got stuck and was not able to remove herself. A couple of days later, a house sitter saw fluids dripping down the fireplace and smelled something rotting. She soon discovered what the cause was. The body in the water tank. I actually covered this story once before in an earlier video, and unfortunately, it is true. Elisa Lam was in a hotel when she went missing. After a few days of her disappearance, the guests at the hotel started to complain about black water coming from the faucets and from the showers. Upon review of the water storage tank, they found Elisa Lam's body inside. They actually don't know if she put herself in there or if someone else did. Many people think that she was possessed by a spirit, or someone tried to kill her and hide her body. Nonetheless, nothing is more terrifying than knowing that you've been drinking, bathing, and washing yourself with the remains of a dead body.